And what qualifies you to be in the liquor business?
Specifically?
I've been one of the most successful bootleggers in the country.
I lay down, they come after me again.
Those clowns owe me 20 grand.
Mr. Capone wants his money.
I want to put criminals in jail.
I don't suppose you're related to Nucky Thompson.
They killed him. I know killed him. Whatever you say.
You have nothing to fear from me, Mr. Thompson.
Who said I was afraid?
Welcome to What the Flick. I promised it, and I have delivered. Episode 2, the final season of Boardwalk Empire, The Good Listener, the name of the episode. We've got Cenk here. Ben Mankiewicz. Okay, let's start. Let me ask this question right at the beginning. Do you like the flashbacks?
Oh, good question. I didn't see that coming. I like it. Yes, it gives me perspective on what happened. I think the actor that they hired to play the young Commodore does a good job of impersonating Dabney Coleman's voice. Totally, yeah. So a nice job on that. It takes me out of the mood a little bit, so I've got some issues with it. But I like the background so much that I'm going to say yes.
Yeah, I mean, we've already learned some obviously important things. You see that this was a tender, kind kid, more tender, more kind than the other kids, in fact. And looked out for his younger brother and loved his sister and was not allowed to grieve over his sister. I hope it doesn't get in the way too much of breaking momentum for the steamroll of violence that we have coming in the episodes to come.
But what it does do is it does give us that context on Nucky, that he is merciless at times, but that he is not really a bad guy. I mean, the question that's been a central question in Boardwalk Empire, I think, throughout is Nucky a bad guy or a good guy? And I think this gives us insight into that. And obviously the writers have decided, no, he's a good guy.
But did he not? Because the issue for good guy and bad guy when talking about gangsters is, of course, at what point did you kill a completely innocent person? A show we do not do that I watch, Sons of Anarchy. This week, the lead character, who we're supposed to like and we've stuck with, I mean, they came to get some guys, and it turned out they got the wrong guys, and there was a four-person menage a trois. I don't know what that is, a menage a trois plus one, right?
A menage a quad.
A menage a trois, right?
A menage a quad.
And it was like three guys and a girl, and so there was some bisexuality going on. And they just killed everybody, but they were the wrong people. Like all they were church people who were being hypocritical and having a menage a quad, but they murdered them, and you're like, what? Well, you can't kill those people.
Well, Breaking Bad had some of that.
Breaking Bad had some of it, but we know he was bad.
Right.
Didn't Nucky kill the kid who they barricaded in the basement, who he hid in the basement with on an early raid?
Oh, right. And he wasn't, like, you thought he wasn't gonna kill him.
Well, he wasn't gonna, but he was an innocent.
Not really. He had stolen from him.
Yes.
So that was the thing. Is he going to be merciless with this kid who had stolen from him, or is? And we turned out, no, he was merciless. That was one of the moments where you were leaning towards he's a bad guy.
It was also partly because then he would have been a witness. But yeah, I guess you can argue he stole, but I mean he didn't steal.
That's why it's been an open question. That's why the show's interesting.
Right. Okay. So just when you think that here's Nucky in these episodes, he's trying to make the deal for a lifting of prohibition, he's making the deal with Bacardi, he has the great interaction with Joe Kennedy, which was just, I mean, the best.
Oh, I didn't see that coming.
I did not see it coming at all. And he wants to get out. He's intrigued by Torio's retirement, clearly, right? How do I get out? How do I get enough money and get out of this nonsense? Because this is never really what I was. I'm a politician. I'm a scoundrel, but I'm not a killer. And you think he's looking for a way out, but he realizes the only way out is by coming fully back in. And so he kills, what's his name, Tonino, who was having the meal, who he had the conversation with under the caricature of Billy, right? So he has his Cuban valet kill him, cut off his ear, and send it to Lansky and Luciano and Bugsy, as if to say, don't forget about me. You tried to kill me. I'm still here.
Yeah. So the thing is, that's the thing about gangsters and crime. You can't, Torio is somehow, in some ways, lucky, right? That he didn't quite die during his execution.
Right, yeah.
Right? And that they were like, okay, he's harmless now because he's a full surrender, right? They wouldn't let Nucky do a full surrender. They wouldn't believe that he surrendered. If he showed weakness, he's dead. a retirement would equal he's going to get killed.
The only realistic retirement for a guy like that in this era would be moving to France. Like, I check out. I got $2 million. I'm leaving the country. Like,
something along those lines. Right. But as you can tell, he was not safe in Cuba either.
No, that's true. Right.
Right. And so what he wants is not retirement. He doesn't want Torrio. He wants to be Joe Kennedy. Like, that's the ideal. He's like, how does this Irishman, who's, Nucky's also Irish, have his hand in all these different pies? And he, we know through history that Kennedy also, was a smuggler like Nucky Thompson.
We were led to believe he was a bootlegger.
Right. But somehow he's clean.
And as Kennedy said about those guys in the meeting, they're Brahmins, not brawlers.
Right. But it's unclear at this point in the show what Kennedy is.
Right.
That he straddles that line in a way that Nucky is very envious of.
Very envious, that's right.
Right. So he'd like to retire into official business.
That's right.
Right, and that makes a ton of sense, and I'm rooting for him, right?
Yeah, so we learned a couple of things. First of all, the Stephen Graham, who plays Al Capone, who's British, I mean, that guy can just act. I mean, that guy is good.
Al Capone is British?
Yeah.
I did not know that.
And that guy is good. Good. I mean, just the way and also just the way that's scripted and shot. I mean, he's telling these non-jokes, but he just laughs hysterically, so they all laugh.
Yeah.
You're like, who are these guys? And he's got so many of them. It's so clear that you can't breed loyalty in all those guys. And then I love that great moment of where Van Alden and Eli are out the 20,000. It turns out that's an Eliot Ness raid, so we know that the world is about to come. We're in an era when the world's about to come down on Al Capone.
Oh, I didn't put that together, to be totally honest with you, because they were trying to figure out who's the crooked Fed.
Yeah, and it's the opposite.
And it turns out they're perplexed because it isn't a crooked.
It's the least crooked Fed there ever was.
Right. Interesting.
So we know the world's about to come down on Capone, and so Eli and Van Alden rob from Capone to pay Capone.
Oh, rob from Peter to pay Paul.
Right,
as he said in the robbery.
And then he goes back and shoots the guys in the head. The guys who were like, oh, my leg, and you instantly have sympathy for these guys, even though they're gangsters. And we don't know if he killed all three. We know he executed the last two.
No, he didn't kill the fat guy.
He didn't kill, right. Right. So that
fat guy's a player.
Right.
Like, he's been in a bunch of episodes. He's going to come back into the story. So that's why he couldn't be killed.
I agree. And because we didn't see him get killed, so he's probably not.
He didn't have a red shirt on.
Star Trek reference. And then when we get that great scene, this is why this stuff is so good. I mean, this writing is so good that not only do we get that nonsense of stealing from Capone to pay Capone, but then they just dump the money on the table, and like they're like, "What are you doing here?" And they're like, "Oh, just paying." Nobody cares. Nobody's counting. Nobody's like, nobody. Largely, you might have been able to get away with it even if you hadn't done it. You just waited a week, showing up a week later with your money.
Right. Or you could be 5,000 short and no one would ever know. Right. What I kept thinking during that scene where they keep dumping the money on the table was, hey, don't splash the pot.
Right, totally. They're totally splashing the pot. And that's a great conversation with Capone and then the guy from The Wire, the wonderful Huck from The Wire, who's Capone's guy now, trying to get the accountant to screw up the count. Just by yelling numbers at him. And they think they got a good one, like 79. Like, good one.
79. Well, that is a good number.
It is a good one.
That'll throw you.
And then the best line he utters, Van Alden mutters after they kill the guys. Because Van Alden, I mean, I think Michael Shannon might be the best working actor there is.
Wow, strong statement.
I mean, he is so good. Because it's not like he's talented, he has a gift. And a 99 Homes, a movie you would really like, it's coming out soon and coming out in the fall. But he walks away from that and he yells, "Why must there always be pandemonium?" After he shoots the two guys in the head.
On a line like that, what I'm always curious about is whether it was written or it was ad-libbed, or that it was some combination there of having worked with
Michael
Shannon all these years. They think he would say something like this.
He would say this. I read on Vulture that it just said that it's like Michael Shannon has convinced the writers that, hey, Van Alden is crazy and funny, and like let him do Michael Shannon. So I'm going to guess that they wrote it, but knew exactly who they were writing for. Why must there there'll always be pandemonium.
You're right. You've been so right about this whole episode. That is a terrific line that I'm going to quote from now on.
As soon as I said it's my only note on my phone, which I had with me. I was like, oh, why must there always be pandemonium? So what else do we saw Jillian, and you get that moment where you think she's in a spa, and it turns out, nope, it's not a spa.
Yeah. No, I knew that she was locked up, so I knew it wasn't going to be a spa, but I was like, let me see how this turns. Then she's having the normal conversation. I'm waiting for the turn into crazy. What I did not wait for and did not anticipate was a turn into awesome lesbianism.
But not. They're not fooling around. She's giving her dresses.
No.
Yes, she's just giving her dresses.
No.
Yes. Like it took an extra post-lesbian turn at the moment where they got all of us to believe lesbianism. No, she's just giving her dresses and telling her what to wear them and getting it taken in. And in exchange, she gets to write a letter.
I missed that because I was so obsessed with how terrific the idea of that affair was, even though that woman is entirely unattractive, right?
Yeah.
I mean, and that they dress her up to be unattractive, etc. But I was thinking, I had already substituted an attractive person into that scene.
You're an idiot.
And so now you ruined it for me.
It's just outfits.
Exchanging dresses. Oh, for Christ's sake.
That's why the show's
great. That's
why the show's great. It took her like a believable turn. She wants to be able to.
But but back then, you're telling me there wasn't lesbianism in the attic in those situations?
I'm sure
there was actually worse than it is today.
I'm sure there's lesbianism at that person. Don't worry.
Yeah, and by worse, I mean actually non-fun lesbianism, you know?
All right, real quick. So I found that now that we know that Luciano and Lansky and Bugsy Siegel are very much doing business together, and they want to take out Maranzano, who I think I've got him pronounced right, the guy who we just met, who took out the other guy whose name was almost the same.
Joe the Boss.
Who took out Joe the Boss. They want to take out him. They're at that whorehouse, and I guess it's their whorehouse, but how do we know a Manzarano guy is not going to come in there to get his knob polished, as they say, right? And they're hanging out there publicly. I think they're being foolish.
Well, so a couple of things here. Number one, the young guy is Bugsy Siegel?
That's Bugsy Siegel, yeah.
I didn't even know that.
They call him Benny. See, when we first met him at the end of last season, 6 years ago, when he was super young and he was begging to do work for Lansky, and they let him do something. He's too violent. They were like, calm down, which is true.
Right.
You know, we want to romanticize charming Warren Beatty, Bugsy Siegel. It was a horribly, terribly violent psychopath, at least early on. And they called him Benny. You know, he said, "I'm Benjamin Siegel."
God damn it, I missed so much. I'm so glad we're doing this. You're giving me an education. The only thing you screwed up is letting me know they're not actually lesbians. Okay, so that makes the scene so much cooler. Of course, Bugsy Siegel then made the city that has given us great enjoyment and pain in all of our lives.
That's right.
Las Vegas. To me, I got something similar but different from what you got out of that scene. Like this guy who got killed at the end, I always forget his name.
Tonino. I had to look it up.
Tonino.
And he worked for Gyp Rossetti, who blew up Billy.
Right. So that guy has now betrayed like 18 different people.
It turns out like he did it, but his fourth betrayal didn't work out.
Yeah. So the over-under on, I think, mob betrayals is 1.5.
So, and he got the over. He nailed it. He kept
and he was
playing.
going to walk away with the over, but then like 2.5 is too much.
And
apparently.
You see how good Nucky is, because even though he wanted to send a message to these guys, but Nucky knows, this guy's like, I'd love to work for you, Mr. Thompson. He's like, yeah, you'd be a great employee. Like you'll sell me out in a second, so instead I'm going to slit your throat and cut your ear off.
Yeah. And so
I'm sorry, I'm going to have my Cuban valet do it.
Yeah, what I didn't understand was, I'm like, here's a guy who survived the big tuna. He survived like 18 different deaths. How can he be this unsavvy? Like, by not being fully loyal in the presence of Lansky and Luciano, he's signing his own death warrant. And he knows it because he says it to Nucky later.
But he also sensed after that meeting with those guys, they're going to kill me. Like,
Now, my point is that meeting at the brothel, he should have been like, oh man, we're going to go get that son of a bitch. I'm totally with Meyer.
Yeah.
You've never been more right.
You've never been more like.
Right.
Yeah.
So it almost rang false to me, because I'm like, how could you be this unsavvy after having survived 18 coups?
I think he's one of those guys who's unsavvy. Remember, he hid in the closet to survive the Gyp slaughter. So like he's a little lucky. And so it just finally caught
guess so,
it
yeah.
caught up with. Real quick, we got to wrap it up. But like Van Alden and Eli, a great relationship just in general, because there was also that moment where Eli has all this humanity left in him. He misses his wife, he misses his kids, he starts to cry. You know, and
I have a feeling he's been crying for 6 straight years.
and there's that, and Van Alden says sometimes it's easier to despise someone than to love them.
Yeah.
You know,
It's a great Van Alden.
Yeah, it's a great Van Alden line. And his wife, he's got this horrible relationship with his wife.
Of course
you know,
he
we
does.
thought he had her under control I'm
Right.
sure, speak incorrectly about it last year when he was sort of taking charge as a 1920s man. But no, she's like taking
Right.
the other cigarette out.
It turns out she's a wife.
And she can't, there's nothing he can give her that's enough.
Yeah.
You know.
She looked great though in that scene.
She did. She was very sexy. Then at the end, we learned that kind of an interesting thing, that guy who was yelling at Van Alden to get the 20,000 early on, the Capone enforcer, all of a sudden we see he's in Eliot Ness's office. Like he's a government agent, but we don't know. I don't think we can tell who knows that he's in a betrayal. Like what side is he betraying?
Yeah, so there's a lot of great things that they've set up here, including what happens finally with Van Alden, what happens finally with Eli, 2 guys who've been on the precipice, who've been on the bubble the whole time, and who are, I guess, among the top 3 central characters of this story, along with Nucky, right? They've been there all throughout, right? And they're in the center, not in the periphery of the stories in most of the stories.
They are, the 3 of them, I believe, are the first 3 credits.
Right.
Yeah.
And so I'm very curious about how they're going to do it. At the same time, I'm frustrated that we fast forwarded 6 years and we don't know why Lucky got the huge scar and Capone got the huge scar and Arnold Rothstein died in a spectacular way in real life, and we got robbed of seeing that.
We just know it caught up with him.
Yeah, instead we just got...
He owed money to Rothstein. That's the truth of his murder.
So that's the other thing. Like, I wanted to see, because it's such a great show, how Rothstein screwed up. Because in the beginning, he was like the Seahawks. He seemed invincible. Yeah,
but
right?
but we already saw it. Like, he got in, like, he literally started losing more money than he could take in.
Right. Yeah, we did see it, I guess. That even though he was so smart, his Achilles heel was gambling.
Yeah.
And he just couldn't smart his way out of that
and he
addiction.
was borrowing from the wrong guys to pay the wrong guys, and it
Right.
caught up with him.
So, and then...
That's the theory on how he got killed.
Right. And so I wish we'd seen all that. It
So
would
did
have
I,
been
yeah.
great. Maybe a longer last season, just to kind of... You're catching us up what happened in Nucky's childhood. Couldn't you throw us a bone and tell us how Lucky got the huge scar and Arnold got whacked?
We also... no Dr. Narcisse yet, although he's coming, clearly.
Yeah.
And I, again, quoting from Vulture here, because they refer to this, because I thought this too early. They say the only 2 main characters we haven't seen are Dr. Narcisse and the shockingly still alive Mickey Doyle.
How could Mickey Doyle be alive?
Totally. How could Mickey Doyle possibly?
He's far luckier than Big Tuna.
Tonino and Tonino's got nothing on Mickey Doyle.
Right. Well, I tell you, I can't wait for him to come back. That's what I'm looking forward
there
to.
were 4 times in season 1 I was like, oh, that guy's a scene away from dying. About that government agent, I don't think that if you were a government agent who was infiltrated Capone's gang, that you would get an assignment like he got. And maybe I'm thinking beyond what the show is doing, but like that guy came in and was like, yeah, this is about the brothel on Huron Street, the cat house on Huron Street. Break down all these numbers for me by Tuesday. Like if you're an undercover agent, you gotta be undercover all the time.
Yeah,
you know,
that would be too petty a task to give a Capone undercover agent.
Right, so which makes me think that they don't know he's working for Capone.
So he's actually on Capone's side,
on Capone's
not the
side,
government
and
side.
what he does is tell Capone what the government's doing.
That's interesting. At first I thought it was the brothel that Lansky and Luciano were talking in and it was going to get tied in. Then I realized, no, that's New York and that's Chicago.
Right.
Okay,
yeah.
so it can't be. All right, my final thought is, it's related to our first conversation about Nucky. I think Nucky was a good guy who was so smart that he was thrust into the role of a bad guy, because how else would he make it?
Right, in that world, in that place.
Yeah,
but he also, keep in mind, we're learning that he learned from a guy who we're going to get revealed, if we keep with the flashbacks, the Commodore, who was a very bad guy. So
that's true, but in the context of how Nucky's going to make it out from the incredible poverty that his dad has put him in, you know, it's not just that this family's in a bad situation, his dad's an idiot, right? And here's a really bright kid. He's not going to make it out by being an entrepreneurial businessman that doesn't, like, that's not the context he lives in.
No, all the entrepreneurial businessmen started with money.
Right. So he was cursed with such intelligence that he had to, in that context, become a gangster.
That's
right.
That's
eventually.
That's probably true. That's right. That's a good point. Yeah.
So, and hence, he's actually a good guy.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, I largely agree with that. And we'll obviously, as this season plays out, we don't. I mean, the real Thompson, whose name is not Nucky, but the real Thompson, who it's based on. Maybe it is Enoch. I don't know. It's close.
I don't
it's
think
not
so.
Quite.
The name
it's
was a little
it's slightly off. Yeah. He didn't. He lived, but he wasn't also this involved.
He wasn't.
So it's a different.
He was
they're
a small character.
Regardless of what happened to him, they're capable. They can kill Nucky if that's the route they want to go.
Oh, of course, because the real Thompson is a real small character in history. They just used as a plot device.
And he was involved in bootlegging, and he was the county treasurer.
Right, so they can do whatever they want with that guy, and it doesn't violate history or whatever. So, yeah, it'll be, of course, that's what we want to see. We want to see that's blood splattered on his face on the billboards is his own or someone else's, and what eventually happens to our old friend Nucky Thompson.
And what happens to Chalky, too. We will, here's my final thought. I'll make Cenk come back next week.